Mataro here with Monarch Training. In this video, we're going to cover the jerk, taking a weight from our shoulder and locking it out overhead.
Alright, so the jerk, again, just like the strict press and push press, our goal is to send a weight from our shoulder to over our head. Now the jerk is going to be the most efficient way to do this because it will allow us to do the most amount of weight because we're going to be moving ourselves around it. Starts off very similar to the push press where we're going to be getting a dip and a drive. So I'm going to just literally copy and paste that first half into this video. First off, let's break down the push press. It's going to be a dip, drive, and press. So let's talk about the setup. When we go to setup, it's absolutely critical that we have a good front rack position. When we do this, we want to have it firmly resting on our shoulders, but we're also going to be active in our hands. We're not going to have it in our fingertips as we would for a front squat. We need to make sure we have a good solid grip on that bar. Now from here, what I like to do to help get this active position, very common, people will just kind of like, oh, okay, I got to get my elbows up. No, you want to get your elbows up as high as you can while your back is also really tight. So the first thing you do, set your back, pin those shoulders back, and then bring your elbows up. I find it helpful to kind of shrug into the bar. This will give you a nice front rack. You can use this when you go to jerk. You should also use this when you go to front squat as well. So once we have that nice solid brace position, our dip, let's break this down. When we go to dip, it's just a 2-3 inch dip. That's it, just 2-3 inches, get that little bit of a rebound. We're not doing a full front squat here. We're just getting a short, shallow dip so we can get our legs involved. And with that, try to stay vertical. We want to keep that bar over our center of balance, which will be kind of like the start of our laces. Yeah, so you can also think when we go, a couple common mistakes when it comes to the dip is, common mistake is letting the knees come forward and the weight ends up kind of on your toes. Other thing is pushing your hips back. So common mistake is letting our knees come forward. We want to use our hips and get everything out of our lower body that we can. Try to initiate it kind of similar to a front squat, where we're kind of bringing our hips down, pushing our knees out. That's what I like to focus on in a jerk, is keeping my chest up, pushing my knees out, and then come up fast. Common cues for the dip, we want to stay that vertical path. So you can think kind of like oompa, loompa, doompity doo. If we were to push our hips back like we would if we were doing like a low bar back squat and we push our hips back, what's going to end up happening is as we come up, we're going to be driving that bar forward. And then if I let my knees come forward, I'm just not going to have any power. All right, now let's talk about the drive part. So we got our dip, we push our knees out, we go to drive up. Most common mistake I see on the drive is dropping our elbows and trying to making it too much of a press. If we take this very literally, it's a push press. We're still doing the push. The push is coming from our legs. So keep those elbows up. Try and think of always trying to get your elbows higher. That'll also come into play once we get overhead. Keeping that active shoulder, we're shrugging up. That's where we're going to create our shoulder stability from, reaching as high as we can. Yeah, so never let the elbows drop. Otherwise, you're just kind of doing a strict press and you're not using your legs. I think it's safe to say pretty much everyone can squat more than they can strict press, so use it. After we get that dip and drive, instead of finishing with a press like we do on the push press, we're going to be driving ourselves underneath that bar. So if you simplify it down, the dip and drive would be a jump, right? Then we're going to be landing in either a kind of shallow squat position or a full squat position if you were to do a squat jerk. We're not going to cover that one here right yet, but a push jerk is landing in that shallow squat. So we're going to get our hips back. Same exact stuff as we would do in a power snatch or power clean. same exact positioning, hips back, and we're driving that weight overhead to get in line with our center. Then from there, our other option would be a split jerk. Whichever leg feels more comfortable can go out in front. Not super important. Whichever leg you feel stronger with when you go to do your jerks. But we're going to land in that kind of lunge type position. What's important in that lunge position is that we feel stable. When it comes to the push jerk or the split jerk, preference over one or the other is just going to be whichever one you feel stronger with. It's good to work on both, but in competition, whichever one you feel better with. People will prefer the split jerk because it requires a little bit less mobility, a little bit easier to balance. We want to be balanced side to side as we would in the push jerk or the split jerk, but also in that split jerk will allow us to have a little bit more leeway kind of front to back because we can push into that front leg or into that back leg, and it'll just be a little bit easier to balance. To get into the best split jerk position with that goal in mind of our goal is to be in a balanced position, we want to make sure we have a nice base. So we don't want to end up being on a tightrope. We want to get a little bit of width with that getting into that split position. We'll have roughly half our weight in the front, half our weight in the back, possibly a little bit more in the front. But our goal is to move straight down and split and kind of slide our feet out real fast, slamming that front foot into the ground. We're not going to be jumping our feet up. We're going to be extending up really fast and then pushing ourselves under while sliding our feet into place, whether that's the push jerk or the split jerk. We want to have our full front foot on the ground. The back foot, we're going to want to be on the ball of our foot, because if we were to kind of straighten out our leg and try to put our heel to the ground, that's going to end up moving our hips. We're going to end up opening up our hip to the side, and we're going to end up really off balance, rotating completely off. So our back knee is going to be bent slightly. If the weight's real heavy and we didn't get it high enough, we can kind of push ourselves a little bit lower into that lunge if we have to. Once we get into that position, then we'll have the recovery phase. In the recovery phase, ideally we're going to move our front foot back halfway, then our back foot up the second half. That'll get us right back to where we started. Now, I said ideally, if we mess up and we get a little bit forward, just lift it by any means possible. It's not overly important, but if we are in the position to bring our front foot back first, that'll help us get back to that balanced position a little bit easier. If we were to step with the back leg first, that's going to bring the weight forward, and we're going to have to kind of continue walking forward. Now, as we go to drop under, or I don't really like the term drop under, but as we go to push ourselves underneath the bar, we want to keep our chest straight up and down. We want to be trying to move straight up and down with no movement side to side. Anyway, that's it for us here at Monarch Training. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video. Peace.